We all remember The Girl from Tomorrow, the story of Alana, a girl from the year 3000, trapped in the 90s and trying to find her way home. But we already covered that in my last video. This time, we're looking at Tomorrow's End, and the show's not trapped in the 90s anymore. This series takes us to the future, both the utopian world of the year 3000 and the dystopian nightmare of 2500. But what happens when you change the past? What if you have no future to go home to? What if it's up to you to save the future? The cast is bigger, the story wider, and the stakes have never been higher. My name's Anthony Robin, you can call me Tony, and this is Tomorrow's End. The Girl from Tomorrow was shown on television in 1990, and just 2 years later we got the conclusion and follow up to the story with Tomorrow's End, taking our heroes from 1990 to the year 3000 and 2500. The main cast all return, as do the writers. We have a new director, but the only notable change is James Finley, Bronson, looking a bit older. If you enjoyed the simple story of the first season, hold on to your butt, because things are about to get a lot more complicated. Season 2 builds on the world and lore set up in the first season and really runs with the ideas. To give you an example of how things are going to go, this paper has a diagram of all the time travel in Season 1, and this is the time travel in Season 2. Oh yes, things are going to get timey-wimey. I'll be recapping the episodes, examining the characters, and going off on more than a few tangents. If you haven't watched the show yet, it's available on various streaming services, including right here on YouTube. But viewers beware, spoilers from this point on. Episode 1, A Time Without Vegemite. We open with Bronson recapping the last season. We get a new opening sequence with clips of everybody running, rather than just Alana. We could say this reflects the larger cast and bigger story of this season. The episode proper begins with Jenny waking up in the year 3000. She's in a completely white room, dressed in white, and lying on a white, futuristic, sun lounger. As Jenny explores, she begins to stick to the walls and floor. But Alana arrives and explains she just needs to relax. The room's been programmed to prevent people from hurting themselves. I have some thoughts on this, connected to my thoughts on the year 3000 in general, but I'll talk about that later. Alana tells Jenny she's been out for a month, but she's now completely healed. We get a quick line of explanation to remind the audience that they can take Jenny back to just after she left in 1990, so she can spend as long as she likes in the future. Alana shows Jenny around, and the first stop is the high-tech, highly secure time lab, but apparently it's now completely open for anyone to just wander around. The time capsule is being repaired, and we meet a new character, Lorian. She's replacing Talista, who I'm assuming has completely abandoned Alana, and then we get the return of Silverthorn. He's lost his memory from the explosion at the end of the last season, and since he's apparently not dangerous, they let him roam freely, as long as he's accompanied by the Sentinel. The Sentinel is a floating orb that prevents you from doing any harm. It's kind of like an ankle monitor that can freeze you in place if you do any harm. Only Jenny doubts Silverthorn, but the people of the future are so nice and naive that they think Jenny's being unfair by not believing Silverthorn. In the communal hall, Jenny has trouble with the future shower, just like Alana had trouble with the 90s shower. It just shows whatever time period you're in, you'll always have trouble with other people's bathrooms. The future shower goes a bit OTT and removes all the hair dye from Jenny's hair. Does this mean she's not been washed the whole time she's been here, or do they still use soap and water on sick people? Now we're in the future, Jenny's the one who's out of place. She appreciates the nature and thinks it's very beautiful, but she doesn't reckon much of walking anywhere, and she finds things a bit boring. Alana explains that they're still busy rebuilding the world. They don't have time for ragers, television, or other forms of electronic entertainment. But for saving Alana's life, Jenny does get to take transducer lessons. Unfortunately, she's not good at the transducer right away, and Alana and the transducer teacher laughing at her don't help. Down at the beach, Jenny lets Silverthorn know that she won't trust him. She even taunts him about being stuck with the Sentinel. Unfortunately, this only seems to strengthen Silverthorn's resolve, and he uses a game of, what is this, glow tennis? Future tag? Tron? To engineer a child falling into dangerous waters. Silverthorn then bravely throws himself in to rescue the child, or at least to look heroic, as he's not able to get the child out by himself. Alana and the transducer teacher mind link, making their transducer powers more powerful so they can pull out Silverthorn and the child. Make sure you remember this, it's going to pay off in a mere 12 episodes. The small child is rescued, and Silverthorn is rewarded by having his Sentinel removed. After all, he's a completely reformed character now, right? Right? Well, we have bigger problems right now, as it turns out time travel has changed the past. Bruno is shocked. Shocked, I tell you.
I thought the past was unchangeable.
Based on what, Bruno? Based on what? Did none of our time travel fiction make it to the year 3000? Back to the Future? A Sound of Thunder? The City on the Edge of Forever? Okay, maybe Bruno subscribes to the grandfather paradox, the idea that time can't be changed, like in the Futurama episode, All's Well That Roswell. But since you have actual time machines now, and by the way, they now have a time gate as well for easier, faster time travel, maybe you should have done some scientific experiments first, Bruno. Small trips, before you started sending people 500 years into the past. Damn it, Bruno. You seem so calm and chill, but your cavalier approach to time travel just really stresses me out, man. Anyway, in a panic, they send everyone back where they came from as quickly as possible to prevent any further changes. They take Silverthorn home first. We get our first look at the year 2500, and yeah, it's a bit of a mess. Silverthorn still has no memory, so he convinces Lorien to accompany him until he finds something familiar. Alana goes with them, but surprise surprise, it's a trap. Silverthorn yoinks their transducers, and his gang jump out to ambush them. The credits roll as they're taken captive. We have a new closing credit scene too, with the credits rolling over the blue farty clouds from the time gate instead of the plasma ball from season 1. This first episode was full to bursting, even more so than the opener of season 1. They're following up last season's stories with Jenny and Silverthorn getting their treatments, and setting up the seeds for this season's stories with the time gate and the time changes. It's a good episode, even with everything they have to set up and explain. I would have liked them to spend more time exploring the year 3000, but it's possible that this perfect future is actually so boring that there's nothing else worth showing. We got to have some nice moments with Jenny and Alana, the two girls still working well off each other, and we get one of the stronger cliffhangers with Silverthorn's gang jumping out to ambush Alana and Lorien. The year 3000, the lovely, perfect future. Am I the only one who really hates this place? Yes, it's lovely, nature's recovering, people are living in harmony with the environment, and apparently they're free to pursue scientific endeavours without worrying about corporate interests or funding. But everyone is just too bland and nice. I know the use of the transducer requires you to control your emotions, but these people are so controlled they're almost dead. Alana's parents gave her up when she was so young she can't even remember them, so she could be sent to Earth for her healer training. This isn't depicted as a tragedy, or even regrettable but necessary, but just another normal part of life in the year 3000. I find it really creepy. It's like they're taking non-attachment to an extreme, and the tech of this world enforces serenity on the population. In addition to the transducers, the walls of the hospital will restrain you if you're not calm, and the Sentinels can freeze you in place if you act out. In the first episode of the first season, Alana was reprimanded for a mild moment of teenage moodiness. It feels like the pressure to conform in the year 3000 is at a nightmarish level. The future is peaceful, but it's too peaceful. These people need to shake themselves up and start living. Episode 2. The End of Everything. Alana and Lorien are captured by Silverthorn's gang. We get a couple of lines of dialogue to let us know that as far as his gang's concerned, Silverthorn's only been gone for about an hour. Silverthorn explains to them that Alana and Lorien are from the future, and with the time capsule, PJ and the transducers, he can take over 2500 and make them all rich. Back at the time capsule, Jenny is getting worried and thirsty. The time capsule can synthesize water from the air. Apparently it can synthesize glasses from the air too, which is very impressive. Eventually, Jenny goes after Alana and Lorien, but she falls into a pit trap. And then we meet Nick. Nick's a native of the 2500s, with a few less than legal ways of making money, including extorting people who fall into his traps. The currency in 2500 is water chips, as drinking water has become such a rare commodity. Nick frees Jenny in exchange for promises of tanks of water from the time capsule. We get a bit of argy-bargy from the two teens. Jenny tries running off, and Nick tries stealing the time capsule as he believes it's a water synthesizing machine. When Jenny explains it's a time machine and she's from 1990, he takes her back to his hideout to look at some old antiques. As well as extorting people who fall into his traps, Nick makes money by scavenging old junk from the ruins. We also get a quick explanation about Globe Corp, the one company that runs the world. Basically, Amazon or a similar company have taken over everything, and if you don't work for them, you're left to scavenge as best you can. Unfortunately, we get our first hints of the weaker parts of this show, as the teenagers come over all hormonal. Back at Silverthorn's hideout, someone unseen opens Alana and Lorien's cell with a transducer. Alana and Lorien try to make a break for it, but Macro holds them up at gunpoint. Alana disables Macro's computer. This means Globe Corp can find out where Silverthorn's hideout is. Alana and Lorien escape. They get PJ, but are unable to grab the transducers. Silverthorn returns to the time capsule with Ralph and Kroll to try and capture Jenny. But with Nick helping her out in exchange for water, Jenny is able to hold off Silverthorn's gang until Alana arrives. Silverthorn briefly holds them at gunpoint, but Jenny tricks him into falling into one of Nick's pits. It's a pretty good action sequence, and it's nice to see Jenny getting the chance to take some direct action. Nick wants to leave 2500 with them. He doesn't see any future for himself in this time. They don't take him, of course, but he does at least get a couple of glasses of water from Jenny for his trouble. Jenny's brought home to the 1990s. She has to leave her transducer with Lorien and then have a sad goodbye with Alana. Jenny goes home and we get an emotional reunion with Irene and Bronson. So many feelings in this episode. Alana and Lorien return to the year 3000, but something's wrong. There's no time lab. No plants, no flowers, just this big rock. Smash to credits. This episode feels like it's still setting the series up. We're introduced to the year 2500 with its ruined environment, polluted water and shortages of food and supplies. We also get some good action when Nick and Jenny fight Silverthorn's gang. Already the scope of this season feels so much bigger. And we're only on the second episode. Episode 3, the other Alana. We open on the big empty rock from the end of the last episode. The time capsule confirms that they're in the year 3000, but something's wrong. Lorien soon collapses, and then Alana starts to feel weak too. They struggle back to the capsule and return to the past to try to correct whatever's gone wrong. They work out it must have been something that changed in the year 2500, something that made the Great Disaster affect not just the Northern Hemisphere, but the entire world. And according to the time capsule, the Great Disaster will happen in 108 hours.
We have 4.5 days to find out what Silverthorn's gonna do.
Damn, that's some quick maths, Alana. They plan to hide this time capsule, wait, and follow Silverthorn when the original time capsule arrives. They're sure he must have done something to change the past. We see them sneak after themselves from episode 2 and use the transducer to let themselves out of the cell. They're basically doing Back to the Future 2, but on a TV budget. Unfortunately, Alana and Lorien are still there when the Globe cops arrive, so they're arrested for being near a crime scene. Some things never change. Alana manages to blag an audience with Draco, the manager of Globe Corp. But when she tells him that they're time travellers from the future and they need his help to correct the timeline, he doesn't believe them. I guess Alana didn't learn from the first season that if you're going to claim to be a time traveller, you need to have proof. Since they aren't believed, they're dragged off to become moddies. This involves having your mind blanked so you become a mindless human robot worker. I imagine it's like the first day of working for an Amazon warehouse. Alana manages to escape by using her elbow pinch and is chased around the Globe Corp building for a while. Finally, she resorts to throwing herself from a high window. Or at least, that's what Globe Corp thinks she's done. She's actually hidden herself in the ceiling. Good plan. I'm kind of interested in the picture of this moddy here. Is this the moddy of the month? Is this one of those, your uniform must look like this before you go and shift posters? Is it some kind of weird future pin-up? We may never know. Meanwhile, in 1990, Jenny is telling the Kellys about her adventures in the future, but she's soon sent to bed. Future adventures or no, there's school in the morning. At school, Jenny's missing Alana, and she becomes a bit snippy with Bronson. We can see she's still got her signature red jacket, but it's tied around her waist so we can't see it very well. Silverthorn returns to his base and finds it's been completely cleared out by Globe Corp, but he has the transducers and PJ, as Alana must have dropped him. Using PJ, Silverthorn displays the plans for the time gate that he stole from the year 3000. He and his gang plan to build the gate with parts that they can steal from Globe Corp. Alana gets all the way back to the time capsule, but it's been locked to Lorien's palm print. Alana really doesn't have a lot of luck with time capsules. In season 1 it was on a timer lock, and now this one's locked to Lorien, who's been modied. Like with the first season, it's taken a few episodes to find the main thrust of the story. But now we know what they need to do. Stop the Great Disaster and save the year 3000. Personally, I'd appreciate it if they could stop the Great Disaster from affecting the Northern Hemisphere as well. That's where I'll keep my stuff. But I guess I won't be around in the year 2500 anyway. Silverthorn's gang. In the year 2500, Silverthorn had to fight to survive every day of his life. According to him anyway. And to help him get by in the ruins, he put together a lean, mean team. Silverthorn's the boss, the leader. What he says goes. He comes up with the plan, and it's up to the rest of the team to carry it out. He's also the face of the team, conducting the negotiations with Draco. Macro. Macro is the brains of the operation, the techie, the computer guy. He also seems to be second in command, as Silverthorn will ask him his opinion from time to time. When we first get to 2500, Macro keeps the base hidden from Globe Corp's scans using his computer equipment. He wears an outfit made of copper wires, with circuit boards attached in different places. Ralph. Ralph is the muscle, all brawn, no brains. He's willing to attack anything head on, no matter the odds. But he complains at the slightest discomfort, and opens his mouth at inopportune times. He wears his distinctive red hair in points. Kroll. Kroll is, well, the girl. She only gets one line in the whole show, so I guess she's the strong silent type. She has a mass of short blonde curly hair. We never do find out what happens to Silverthorn's crew after they're arrested in episode 9. They probably all got modied and are stuck working in the Amazon warehouse of the future. Episode 4, The Time Gate. Alana has guilted Nick into helping her, and they find Silverthorne building the time gate. We get a bit of slapstick as Silverthorne demonstrates it to his crew. Since they're using stolen parts, Alana and Nick decide to report them to GlobeCorp, hoping that they'll stop Silverthorne. We get a quick bit of dialogue explaining that the Great Disaster followed the destruction of a defence satellite. Nick says that must have been one of the peace platforms, but they still don't know how Silverthorne's use of the time gates could affect them. They called into GlobeCorp with this terminal that Nick accesses using his screwdriver. Not a sonic screwdriver though. During the call, Alana admits to having no ID, which is a crime in 2500. Nick gets her out of there before the GlobeCorp show up. Alana thinks she knows where Silverthorne would want to go if he's heading back in time. She asks Nick for a map, and they use these not particularly detailed novelty placemats that are undoubtedly decades out of date to somehow work out where Silverthorne's mansion was in the year 1990. Their video call with GlobeCorp has been sent up to Draco, and he asks Vance to explain how it is that she's still alive.
She jumped out of the 28th floor window.
Perhaps the girl has rubber feet.
And we get a good demonstration of Draco's angry dad energy. Silverthorne travels back to his mansion in 1990 where Eddie... Oh, Eddie. I remembered him setting himself up as an honest businessman, but it looks like he's just been spending the money on good times and bad women. It's got to the point where he needs to sell the mansion. Silverthorne arrives and blocks Eddie's good time with this lady. Silverthorne tells Eddie the new plan. They're going to export water to the year 2500, where drinkable water is worth more than gold. And he wants Eddie to get the limo back. That's the limo that Bronson is currently booby-trapping, just in case Silverthorne does come back. But Irene's had enough of this idea, especially when she's on the wrong end of the trap. She wants her kids to move on from time travel. She just wants to get back to a normal life with her kids and Mr. Rooney. But when Eddie steals the limo back, Bronson goes out at night to look for it. He finds it at the mansion, of course, but gets trapped in the back when Eddie and Silverthorne drive to a toy warehouse, which is the site of Silverthorne's hideout in the year 2500. Silverthorne uses PJ to turn off the alarm on the warehouse, but PJ objects to being used for illegal activity. Well, this is a first PJ. He was happy to open locks, hack the internet, and even steal money in the first season, but now he's objecting to being used for illegal actions. Bronson gets left in the warehouse and helps himself to a new robot toy. I think this is the 1985 Star Roto robot. When Bronson gets home, he tries to tell the rest of the Kellys that Silverthorne is back, but he's just in trouble for stealing. Irene is very upset that her kids can't move on from Silverthorne. Back in 2500, Alana and Nick track down Silverthorne and his crew, just as the GlobeCorps turn up to arrest them. We end with Alana being upset to see Silverthorne return through the time gate before they can turn it off. Our leads and our stories are quite scattered at the moment. We're following Alana and Nick, Silverthorne and Eddie, Jenny and the Kellys, and even GlobeCorp. Still, the episode manages to give everyone their time and develop all sides of the story at once. There is some clunky dialogue dropped in at places, particularly explaining the peace platforms, but overall, they're doing a great job balancing the story. Episode 5, Sucked into the Future. Silverthorne's gang is under arrest, and as he comes through the time gate, Silverthorne himself turns to dive back through. Nick yanks a power on the time gate, keeping Silverthorne in 2500. Alana's angry with Nick, as now Silverthorne's here, he could teach GlobeCorp how to use the time gate, and Nick is annoyed with Alana because she was the one who told him to pull the power on the time gate. This will be an ongoing issue in the show. Alana, understandably, is under a lot of stress as she's trying to save her future, but oh boy does she take it out on the people trying to help her, both fairly and unfairly. Silverthorne is placed in the Modi converter, and Draco comes in, demanding to know what the time gate is. Silverthorne tries to make a deal, but as Draco points out, he's in no position to negotiate. Under threat of being made a Modi, Silverthorne agrees to tell Draco everything. But he lies and says the time gate is a matter transferer that can make huge amounts of water. With the promise of all that water, Draco does cut a deal with him. Silverthorne will deliver huge quantities of water, and Draco will make sure GlobeCorp look the other way. Both men think they've got the other right where they want them. Silverthorne and Draco are similar characters after all. They're both leaders of their respective groups, both have a veneer of charm over hostile and violent characters, and both are stuck under other people with power over them. Nick sees Silverthorne setting up the time gate in his hideout, and after some arguing, he and Alana go back to try and stop him. Back in 1990, Eddie has managed to buy the warehouse and set up a front for Silverthorne's operation. It's amazing what can get done in a day when you have enough cash to grease the wheels. It's a good setup. I'm quite impressed with Eddie. The pools cover for the large amount of water they need. Silverthorne seems unimpressed though. Jenny and Bronson had snuck into the warehouse to return the robot, and Bronson, being Bronson, ends up being sucked through to the year 2500. Jenny ends up following him, but at least she's able to grab PJ, who was left by the pool. Luckily the tanker isn't filled to the top, so the Kellys don't drown when they arrive in the future. As Silverthorne hands over the water to Draco, Jenny is spotted and is forced to make a run for it, leaving Bronson behind. Alana and Nick see Jenny and hide her from the Globe Cops. They fill her in on the impending great disaster and how something has changed time, so now it will destroy the whole world. But they have to go back for Bronson as he's still in the tank. Draco changes the deal with Silverthorne. He wants more deliveries than they'd originally agreed to. He has altered the deal, and Silverthorne better pray that he doesn't alter it further. Wait, wrong franchise. The episode ends with Jenny seeing Bronson being dragged away by Vance and the Globe Cops. This episode brings all our main players back to one time, for now at least, and in a change from last season, all our characters have similar but different goals. Alana wants to stop the great disaster and save her future above all else. Jenny wants to help Alana but needs to get Bronson back, and Nick just wants a quiet life. This will be a source of ongoing drama for the rest of the season. Draco and Globe Corp. Draco is our new baddie this season. He's similar to Silverthorne in a lot of ways. He wants power and is willing to lie, cheat and manipulate people to get it. He's also a leader of the Globe Corps. Like Silverthorne, he's willing to ask for things, but if he doesn't get them, he resorts to violence. However, he doesn't get his own hands dirty. He uses Vance and the Globe Cops. Draco feels betrayed when the Globe Corp executives don't take him up to the moon base, and so begins his plan to take over. Again, like Silverthorne, Draco wants power at any costs, and he's willing to literally destroy the world to get it. Draco has a bald head and thick goatee beard, which combined with his perpetual scowl, give him an authoritative but aggressive look. Globe Corp is our fascist future authority, both corporation and government, keeping the population under their direct control, and converting anyone who's a dissenter, a criminal, or just inconvenient into moddies. The Globe Cops all wear these black leather outfits, similar to the ones worn by the judges in the Judge Dredd comics, another authoritarian group who ruthlessly over-police their population. The Globe Corp civilian workers all wear these matching red uniforms. The rest of Globe Corp's workforce is made up of moddies. These are people who have been reduced to mindless automatons, doomed to labour forever for the enrichment of a few wealthy individuals. Damn, this show gets depressing if you think about it too much. Episode 6, The Grandmother of Invention. After a brief argument, Alana, Nick and Jenny head to Globe Corp to try to rescue Bronson, now dubbing themselves the Dynamic Trio. Vance brings Bronson to Draco while he's bathing in the water Silverthorne delivered. Draco doesn't believe that Bronson's a time traveller, because time travel is a foolish child's fantasy. Bronson ends up falling in the bath because, of course, and that's when Draco's boss calls in from the Paradise Moon base. She's very unconcerned about Draco having a bath with a child. Please, everyone, if you have a Zoom call and you spot one of your colleagues, maybe your boss, having a bath with a child that isn't theirs, call the police. Anyway, we find out the Paradise Moon base is nearly complete, but Draco is being left on the ground. He's more useful there. Bronson's babbling on and tells Draco that Silverthorne has a time gate. Angry at being left behind, Draco decides to use it.
What's a mum?
I've no idea.
How do they not have mums in the future? The Globe Corp building is too well guarded to sneak into, but the trio see Lorian being driven away with a group of moddies. The trio follow them to a waste disposal site to try and rescue Lorian. It goes badly, disastrously in fact. Jenny's leg gets cut and infected, and Alana gets mixed in with the moddies. Nick and Jenny have to leave Alana and go to Nick's grandmother's for medical help. Nick's grandmother is lovely. She grows illegal plants. Not that kind of illegal plant. When Jenny collapses, she uses some kind of healing device on her. It has the same pink healing beam that the transducers have. When Jenny wakes up healed, Nick's grandmother, Maeve, is working on a brain enhancer. Wait a minute, that's no brain enhancer, that's a transducer. Maeve can't use it, even though she invented it. She may be too old, but Jenny agrees to try to teach her in exchange for being allowed to use it. Alana is blending in with the moddies. She's slotted into a wall and given some lovely green goo to eat. Luckily the moddies aren't closely watched as they're supposed to be mind wiped, so Alana is able to sneak off to look for Bronson. Bronson's on the top floor playing with a rocket ship. Bronson ends up telling Draco about the nukes we have in the 1990s, and Draco explains they don't have any weapons like that in 2500 because they have the peace platforms instead. When Draco goes to see Silverthorne, Bronson spies on him with his rocket ship. Realising that Draco's working with Silverthorne, Bronson tries to leave. Finding he's locked in, he tries the window, and the series is getting some good use out of this graphic. The episode ends with someone coming in. The coolest thing about this episode is seeing the first transducer. They sure do slim it down by the year 3000. I do wonder if the healing stick is another of Maeve's inventions, as it has the same pink energy as the transducers. This episode has a rather weak cliffhanger. We can all see that's Alana coming in. Episode 7, Escape from GlobeCorp. Alana comes into the penthouse and Bronson goes for her. But it's a good job his only weapon was a curtain, or he may have had to end the series early. Thanks to Bronson's spy drone, we and Alana find out Draco's plan. He's going to retrieve a couple of nukes from the 90s, load them onto supply ships and use them to destroy the peace platforms. That will leave Draco's bosses on the moon base unable to retaliate against him, so he'll be in charge of GlobeCorp and the world. So now we know what's going to cause the great disaster. Alana uses PJ to find a way out of the building, but Draco and Vance come back into the office. Bronson throws a childish tantrum to allow Alana to slip out. Back in the 90s, Eddie is chilling by the pool. Silverthorne appears and asks him to buy a couple of nukes. Eddie explains that you can't just buy nukes, but there is a protest at the docks against an American warship armed with nukes, which is docked there. This is a real thing that really happened in Australia during the 80s. Australia doesn't have its own nuclear program. It has done testing in partnership with other countries, but they don't have any nukes of their own. During the 80s, America would station ships with nukes in Australia and parts of Europe. Amongst other concerns, protesters worried this could make Australia a target of Russia during a nuclear war. This was all very recent memory at the time the show was aired. Silverthorne returns to 2500 to talk to Draco about getting some help to steal the nukes. And we can see he's brought some stuff back from the 90s for his crew. Were Coke a sponsor of this show? The Coke machine was featured pretty prominently in season 1 as well. I think Ralph and Krull are playing one of those 80s arcade tables, but it's got no branding on it, so I can't tell what game they're playing. Alana slips past the guards into the tunnels under the GlobeCorp building, but gates bar the way. Bronson's found the future TV, and he tries to watch adult content, but age verification is strong in the future, and he's restricted to educational programming. Bronson's food arrives, but rationing is so bad in 2500 that even Draco's office only gets delivered food tablets. Alana snuck back in with his dinner, but they're not as unnoticed as they think. Draco knows she's there, but he wants to follow her back to the time capsule, so he doesn't need Silverthorne and his time gate anymore. Alana and Bronson use the drone to send a message to Nick and Jenny. Bronson is then taken by Draco to fly in a spaceship, but it's actually just a ploy to take Bronson to the Moddy room and put him under mind control. From this point on, Bronson is a mole/traitor working for Draco. He's brainwashed to find the time capsule and report its location to GlobeCorp. Alana and Bronson leave the GlobeCorp building, collecting Lorien on the way. Vance has instructed all the guards not to stop them, so that they can follow Alana back to the capsule. However, one guard didn't get the message. Jenny uses the first transducer to open the gates in the tunnel. It starts fizzing and sparking alarmingly as she does so. They're about to leave when that guard who didn't get the message holds them up at gunpoint. Unfortunately, this episode has quite a lot of the stuff that I find hard to watch this season. The mini love triangle between Nick, Alana and Jenny. They don't argue here, but they do start having passive aggressive digs at each other, and Bronson will be an insufferable little bar steward the whole time he's under the mind control. All this stuff is supported and backed up by the writing, but I find it unpleasant to watch. The year 2500. I'm pretty impressed with the way they bring the year 2500 to life. We have this shot of a ruined Sydney Harbour, which is a bit dated, but effective. Throughout the show, they come back to this street scene set. They manage to cram it with lots of extras and stuff, giving us the vibe of a crowded, overpopulated city, with people managing as best they can amongst the wreckage. And we get some nice little world building details, like the Moddies working in the background, or this kid being chased by a security drone. We have Asian characters on the signs in the background, a staple of dystopian futures since at least Blade Runner. And during this watch through, I started to ask myself, does Tomorrow's End present a cyberpunk future? Let's get out the checklist. Dystopian futuristic setting. Yep, the people of 2500 are living under the control of GlobeCorp. It's a dirty, smelly world with no way to get by other than crime or joining GlobeCorp. Check number 2. Low life, high tech. Yep, in this world people are literally dehumanized, being modified into mindless workers. Meanwhile, computers, drones and other high tech equipment is in constant use. Check number 3. Punk. Hell yeah, it's punk. Nick and Silverthorne's gang all have very individual looks. The punk kids in the mall in 1990 even recognise the cool threads that Nick is wearing. In fact, at the start of season 2, Nick is embodying the cyberpunk lifestyle. He sees no future for himself in 2500, so he's living fast, grabbing what he can, looking cool doing it, and expecting to die young. There is only one argument against this show being cyberpunk. In the end, the dynamic trio topple GlobeCorp's leadership and force them to start rebuilding the planet. Although a few cyberpunk stories may have happy endings, they generally end in tragedy, failure, or with the characters just failing to make any difference. but that might have been a bit too much for a kids show. Episode 8, A Chase Through Time. The guard has them at gunpoint, and Jenny fries the transducer trying to use it on him. Draco sends Vance to let them go, before the guard ruins their plan. Bronson continues to be a pain due to his Moddy mind control. The others are annoyed at his behaviour, but too busy to question it further. They go back to Maeve's, Nick's grandmother, and she repairs the transducer. Alana tests it out and heals the plant, getting her adoring looks from Nick and jealous looks from Jenny. Alana tries to fix Lorian with the transducer, but she can't undo the Moddy control and burns out the transducer trying. Tensions spill over into an argument between Alana, Jenny and Bronson, but Nick steps in playing peacemaker. They decide to check on the time capsule on the way to Silverthorns. When they reach the time capsule, Bronson, following his programming, signals Draco and Globecorp. He then fakes an injury to try to get everyone to stay at the capsule. This leads to more arguing, and Alana goes off with Nick, with Jenny reluctantly following shortly after. Vance and the Globecorps arrive a little while later. At Silverthorn's hideout, he and his gang are living it up. Macro's having a go on this old Thunderblade arcade machine, and in the corner there's an afterburner cabinet. Coke and fast food packaging litter every surface, and Krull and Ralph have some cool new shades. It looks like Silverthorn's enjoying some chocolate milk, a nice callback to his ride in the limo. Move. I assume this is an Australian brand, but then Draco comes calling. He wants to go back to the 90s himself with his Globecorp guards. Both he and Silverthorn are planning to betray each other. Also, please note Silverthorn's jacket, which is so cool it gets its own line in the credits. Eddie's back in the pool, and he's reading the February 1991 issue of Rolling Stone magazine with Kylie Minogue on the cover. He gets a bit of a shock when Draco and the Globecorp show up. Silverthorn gets a bigger shock when Draco ties him to a chair with a bomb. The bomb's powerful enough to flatten the building that the time gate's in, the time gate that Draco needs to get back to the year 2500. Not sure Draco thought this one all the way through. In 2500, the dynamic trio run past Silverthorn's gang and the Globecorps, arriving back in Eddie's pools in 1990. Alana is still highly stressed, immediately snapping at the other two. They find Silverthorn tied to the chair. PJ is able to disable the bomb, but warns that any sudden move would make the countdown start again. Gingerly, they move it to a table. Jenny and Alana argue, again, about trusting Silverthorn, and end up bumping the table, setting off the bomb. Luckily, the transducers are under the desk, and Alana floats the bomb outside. But don't ask about the building next door, or anyone who may have been walking past at the time. They team up with Silverthorn, as they have a common enemy at the moment. Silverthorn drives them to the docks. Badly, he doesn't understand brakes. They get the attention of the police. The police's registration number is 623 RAU, and the van's registration number is 119 PUS. I guess they've dropped the fun reg numbers from the first season. The cops stop the van, and we end the episode with the gang facing a traffic stop. Draco and Silverthorn are great to watch in this episode, with Draco managing to betray Silverthorn first. It's harder to watch the dynamic trio. Bronson's still being unpleasant as he's under the Moddy mind control, and the girls are constantly fighting over what to do next. It's very dramatic, but I do miss when they got along in the first season. Episode 9. Showdown at Eddie's pools. The gang's being pulled over due to Silverthorn's appalling driving. Jenny nearly talks them out of it, but then Silverthorn tries to bribe an honest cop, and they're all ordered out of the vehicle. Alana uses the transducer to cause a distraction so they can get away. The group splits up, with Jenny and Nick fleeing on foot, while Alana and Silverthorn drive away, or they try to. Silverthorn struggles with the gears. I guess all the cars in the future are automatic. Eddie and Draco arrive at the warship in the ice cream van. As the protesters and the Navy all line up for ice cream, they're frozen by a Moddy ray, freeze ray, some kind of future ray, which means Draco can help himself to the nukes. Nick's having a great time in the 90s mole, as Jenny tries to hurry him up, but a couple of cool guys invite Nick to a party later. They're looking at him very intently. Be careful, Nick, they may want to do more than just party with you. Getting back to Eddie's pools, Nick and Jenny set up to try and stop Draco getting through with the weapons, and they find PJ under the table. Alana and Silverthorn arrive at the docks too late. Draco has the nukes. They head back to Eddie's pools, and Silverthorn comments on how they're friends now.
Just because we're on the same side doesn't make us friends.
I guess Alana's learning. Draco gets back to Eddie's pools, and Nick and Jenny try to hold him off. They've set up mannequins and a tape to make it look like they have more people on side. Jenny uses the transducer, and Nick wields a hose. They hold Draco and his men off for a couple of minutes, but ultimately they get through the gate, dragging Jenny with them. Nick rushes through, just behind, before they turn off the gate. Silverthorn and Alana arrive just in time to see Jenny be dragged through the gate and the gate close. They're now trapped in 1990. Just like old times. I love that Eddie was hiding during the whole fight with Draco. He knows when he's outmatched. In 2500, Nick manages to run away, but Jenny and Silverthorn's crew are all taken prisoner. The time gate is dismantled and taken back to GlobeCorp. Nick runs back to his grandmother's to get Lorien. He plans to take the time capsule back to 1990. He's going to fetch Alana and maybe even stop Draco before he gets the weapons. But the GlobeCorps are waiting by the time capsule, jumping out to ambush Nick when Bronson signals them. Under fire, Nick tries to go back, but the time capsule needs a specific date and time. Luckily, he still has the ticket that the two nice men in the past gave him, and he asks the time capsule to go back to that time. I love that the ticket is just for punk concert. The time capsule arrives back in 1990, and this old boy nearly drives into it. He then claims it was Nick's fault and says it scratched up his car. Typical BMW driver. Nick runs off to try and find the docks. He gets a lift with some protesters in a VW Bug, but when he spots Eddie's ice cream van, he runs after it on foot before jumping in a taxi and yelling follow that van. The taxi driver is delighted, but when Nick mentions time travel, he thinks he's crazy and kicks him out. The episode ends with Nick watching the ice cream van disappear in the distance. This is a good episode. There's minimal squabbling between our heroes, and we mix up the pairings a bit. Nice to get some fresh dynamics. Hormonal kids. So I've mentioned a few times that I don't really like the hormonal moments that the kids have in this show. And that might just be because the teen drama isn't really aimed at me, but I still think it's a bit much. So we have our little love triangle with Alana, Jenny and Nick. I do wonder if Nick was included just so the show could confirm that the girls are straight. Jenny and Alana have a very close friendship. So close that it could be read as more than friendship. And personally I would say that whether you read them as just friends or more than friends is equally valid. But the 1990s wasn't a time when people were ready for that. So maybe the writers put in a little love interest so the girls can confirm that they're into guys. I'm not saying that is why Nick's in the show, but it does seem convenient. Now, as I've said, I'm not that interested in the love triangle, but I still don't know why Nick seems to end up with Alana. Okay, technically he doesn't end up with anyone, they all go back to their times, but Nick has 2 smooches with Alana and seems to be a lot more interested in her by the end of the show. This makes no sense. Nick and Jenny both have a punky fashion sense. They spend a lot more time together, and Jenny was even willing to take Nick home to meet her mother. As for Nick and Alana, he was impressed by her transducer skills. He really likes it when people scream at him. Obviously, Nick and Jenny are the better pairing, but as I said, I'm not really into this kind of thing. Episode 10, In the Nick of Time. Nick's been booted out of the cab, so he swaps his hat for this kid's bike.
Give this guy your machine then.
My machine.
Okay, when did bikes stop being a thing? I guess it must have been some time before 2500, since Nick doesn't know what they are either. Nick arrives at Eddie's pools just after he and Jenny have gone through the time gate. He meets up with Alana, Eddie and Silverthorn, letting them know he's brought the time capsule back to 1990. In 2500, Jenny's imprisoned in Draco's office. Draco comes in with Bronson and Vance, and we get a bit of an info dump as they all catch each other up. The nukes have been put on the supply ships, and they'll be launching within the hour. Jenny warns Draco again about ending the world, but he says that if anything goes wrong, he can just use the time capsule to escape, and Vance has to explain to him that the time capsule isn't here, and Draco has one of his raging dad moments. While he's angry, Jenny grabs the transducer. She tries to threaten Draco with it, but he orders Bronson to jump out the window. Since he's still under the mind control, he complies. Jenny gives up the transducer, but Draco won't stop Bronson. He holds Jenny so she can watch him jump out the window. Then this happens.
Spit in his eye and say, die, slime! Die, slime.
I'm sorry, but this trope really annoys me. When a character, under mind control or programming or whatever, gets talked around by a friend or relative. The worst example of this is James Corden in Doctor Who. When being converted into a Cyberman, he hears the cries of his son, and this breaks the conversion. I guess everyone else who's been turned into a Cyberman just didn't love their family enough, and I guess Bronson just didn't try resisting his programming hard enough up until this point. Absolute Anyway, Vance drags them both off to become proper moddies. In 1990, the time capsule has been impounded by the police. No one in the van has a valid driving licence, not even Eddie, so they can't go and claim the capsule. But there is someone they can turn to for help. Back at the deli, Irene's going mad with worry, and when Silverthorn comes in, she gives him a few very firm taps. I guess they weren't allowed to show her, giving him the ringing slap he deserves. After some rather awkward explanations, Mr. Rooney goes to the police station to try to claim the capsule back. They tell the policeman it's an art project from school, a 12-sided shape, a dodecahedron, which is not true at all. We all know this 26-sided shape is a
rhombicubooctahedron.
Unfortunately, the driver of the BMW pops up and starts haranguing Nick. They make up a story about Alana and Nick being boyfriend and girlfriend, and Mr. Rooney has to pay off the BMW driver for the scratch on his car, even though the time capsule never touched it. Once they have the time capsule back, they realise if they could put it in Draco's office in 1990, they would be able to go straight there in 2500. Silverthorne says the Globe Corp building exists in this time. He's seen it. The building is currently the home of Global Interstellar Research, which we can assume becomes Globe Corp in the future. Irene comes up with an idea. They pretend to be a film crew and blag their way into being allowed to film in the upper office. The building manager asks what the film is called.
In the Nick of Time.
He said it! He said it!
With the help of a big wad of cash, the building manager agrees. In 2500, Bronson is about to become a full Moddy. Jenny sneaks PJ onto the Moddy machine and breaks it, but she's too late. Bronson's already been converted. We get a nice line from Vance about why he became a Globe Cop. Wow, sometimes the writing in this show gets too real. The show ends on a real downer, with Jenny begging the Moddy operator to restore Bronson. The adults are working surprisingly well together in this episode. Again, it's a nice change of pace to have them working on the same side. And it's good to get more screen time for Irene. She gets a great scene earlier in the episode where she's making terrible tea on purpose for Silverthorne and Eddie. There's a very strong environmentalist message in the show, and it's very much a reflection of the simplistic 90s kids environmental messaging. The world is everyone's responsibility. Don't litter. Think about your consumption. The world is not an unlimited resource. And in this season, we get to see the consequences of our actions if we don't change. The world of 2500 is ruined. In the first season, Silverthorne said the air here is so bad it could kill you. And while we don't see anyone dropping dead, and no one directly references the air this season, we do see the air quality reflected in the costuming. All the Globe Corps have these air tanks on the back of their uniform, with hoses leading to their helmets. And when other characters go outside, they're depicted wearing masks. My favourite part of 2500 is how the rich people are escaping to the moon, rather than fixing the Earth. By the standard of kids' TV, they managed to avoid becoming too preachy, with only the last episode having a very on-the-nose message, when Jenny and Bronson throw out all the fly spray and aerosols from the deli. In my opinion, the show does fall down a bit, with scenes of Alana screaming and yelling at Nick about destroying the world. He protests that it's not his fault, he's only one individual. There's nothing he can do about it. I understand that the message for kids is supposed to be that the environment is everyone's responsibility. However, Alana comes across like one of those rich kids touring third world countries and telling them that they shouldn't be deforesting the area, selling access to their endangered species, or working in the local phone mines, which is all well and good when you're not dependent on these things for your next meal. The messaging of the show encourages personal responsibility for the planet, but Nick is right. There is very little that can be done as an individual. CFCs didn't stop being used because we stopped buying aerosols. They had to be legislated away. It's the same with acid rain. It wasn't reduced because people decided to cut down on air pollution. Governments and industry bodies had to regulate to change harmful practices. So the messaging of the show overall is well intentioned, but is occasionally simplistic and preachy. It's almost like this show was made for kids or something. Episode 11. The Great Disaster Begins. Gee, I wonder what will happen in this one. Jenny begs the Moddy machine operator to fix Bronson and let them go. But she won't let them go. She has her orders. Jawohl. But Bronson gives Jenny a nudge and a wink. He's not really Moddied, he's just pretending. He distracts the Moddy operator, and Jenny and PJ are able to escape. 17 minutes until the peace platforms blow. Back in 1990, the crew are setting up for their film shoot. The building manager gets an extra $11,000 out of Silverthorne for the inconvenience. So at least someone's having a good day. To keep up the deception, Nick and Alana have to act out a bit of the movie, culminating in a very chaste kiss. But the capsule is damaged. It only has a 40% chance of making the journey. Irene wants to come too, and Alana has to trick her to keep her out of the capsule. Overloading it will only reduce the chances of a successful journey. The capsule leaves, and Eddie comments that he hopes Silverthorne never comes back. Turns out he never liked him either. The time capsule arrives, but Draco has already launched the first nuke, and he saw Alana and co arrive in his office. He takes them prisoner and gloats about how everything is going to plan. Jenny uses PJ to shut down power to the building, and then tries to pretend that the time cops have them surrounded. But Silverthorne betrays them. Shocking! He tells Draco about Jenny and PJ in exchange for not being made a Moddy. With Jenny captured too, the dynamic trio are all together in the office, and Silverthorne manages to take Draco hostage with a water pistol from the 1990s. The first nuke hits the peace platform, and as there are no immediate problems, Draco, with Silverthorne's consent, launches the second nuke. Once the nuke is launched, its destination cannot be changed. The fate of the world is sealed. And then London calls. Everyone's dying. The Northern Hemisphere is lost. They scramble to stop the second nuke, but it's too late. With 8 minutes until the end of the world, the episode ends. So here we are, at the darkest moment. Everything is doomed. Episode 12, Kings of the Dinosaurs. Draco's boss on the moon base explains that the destruction of the peace platforms activated cellular disruptors on Earth. They cannot be deactivated. If the second missile hits, life on Earth is over, and the moon base will starve shortly afterwards without supplies from Earth. Draco and Silverthorn go to rebuild the time gate, abandoning the world they've destroyed. The dynamic trio manage to get the transducers back, and they come up with one last idea. If they attach PJ to Bronson's drone, they can use the transducer to push it to the rocket so PJ can alter the course of the ship, but it's too far. Alana can't push him all the way to the rocket. Alana tries to send Jenny and Nick back to 1990. Maybe if they invent the transducers earlier, the world could be saved. But Jenny has an idea. Remember the mind link from all the way back in episode 1? They can push PJ together. They manage to get PJ on the rocket, and he's able to change the rocket's course, so it won't hit the peace platform. But he's stuck. They can't get PJ back. Moments later, the nuke detonates. And that's after this series has made it clear that PJ is sentient. After all, he understands his own existence and fears its end. Otherwise, Silverthorn's threats wouldn't have worked on him earlier in the season. A few times he's even expressed his own hopes, desires and preferences. Goodbye PJ, you saved us all.
No time to be sorry.
Damn, that's cold, Alana. He's been your companion for years. Anyway, they run off to stop Silverthorn and Draco escaping. Draco and Silverthorn are rebuilding the time gate. They get Bronson to help them as he's still pretending to be Modied. Even as they work together, they keep double crossing and one-upping each other. They're so busy with their struggle, they don't pay any attention to Bronson. And as the dynamic trio arrive, they leap through the time gate. But something's wrong. This isn't 1990. Bronson explains he reprogrammed the time gate to send them back to 5 million BC. The girls go through the time gate for a brief gloat, and then Silverthorn and Draco are stranded forever, millions of years in the past. In 2500, negotiations begin with the GlobeCorp executives on the moon base. The moon base needs supplies, and the people on Earth need GlobeCorp's cooperation to help rebuild, especially now that half the planet's resources have been destroyed. GlobeCorp will start production of transducers going forward. And so time is fixed. Or, as Bronson says, maybe this is the way it always happened. There are tearful goodbyes, and the Kellys go back through the time gate, which is then destroyed. Lorian and Alana return in the time capsule, after giving Nick a goodbye kiss. It's a bumpy ride, but they make it back to the year 3000, and everything's as it should be again. Hurrah! We get a rather clunky environmental message at the end, with Jenny and Bronson throwing out all the fly spray from the deli. Then Eddie shows up to return Bronson's toys, and we find out he's made his pool company into a legitimate business. Well done, Eddie. We close the show with Jenny and Alana each looking up at the moon and saying their final goodbye. They don't launch into a rendition of Somewhere Out There, and I'll let you decide if that's a good thing. So that's it, the end of the story, the culmination of 24 episodes. The final was pretty good, with a couple of issues. Pushing PJ to the rocket was a bit of a weak ending. I understand thematically they need to use the transducers to save the world, because the transducers will save the world going forward. However, we're just left watching Jenny and Alana staring off screen as Nick and PJ narrate what's happening. We do get to see PJ land on this early CGI rocket, but it's not a grand conclusion given all the build-up. Seeing Draco and Silverthorn left in the past is much more satisfying. They've been playing a game of one-upmanship for the entire series, and now they're stuck with no one but each other for company. I wonder how they'll get on. And that was Tomorrow's End. For me, it was a little bit of a mixed bag. I love the big swings they took with the show, the bigger scope and the bigger story. I love the world they built in 2500, but there are some places where I find the show hard to watch. The teen drama and the squabbling grates on me, but that might be because I'm so much older now than the intended audience. However, taken as a whole, the 2 seasons tell a strong, compelling story, and I really enjoyed my time revisiting this show. The characters, when they're not arguing, are great to hang out with, and the villains of the show are delightfully evil. I highly recommend going back and rewatching the whole show. It's still great all these years later, and if you've enjoyed watching this video all the way to the end, why not hit the subscribe button? I'll be back again soon with another forgotten gem of kids TV. If there's something you'd like to see me cover, why not leave a comment below? Until next time, bye-bye.